Now, I was interested to hear this morning, if not a bit concerned, that driverless trucks are set to become commonplace on our roads, with a trial launched across two of the busiest truck routes in Victoria today. This morning, Victorian Transport Association CEO Peter Anderson said, well, it's not a far-fetched idea at all.
We've already got them in mines, 100-tonne tippers running around driverless in mines in Western Australia. So, I mean, it does work. The technology's there. It's just the application where we put it and where it's safest and where the community will accept it.
There's a big difference between a mine and a busy suburban road or a highway. I think he might have a long way to go to convince people. I don't know about that. Think about it at home. Joining me now to discuss it, senior motoring journalist Paul Gover. Well, as I said, no issue at Twiggy's paddocks in the Pilbara, no issue even with a driverless train, Paul. There's a track and it's more or less a straight line. But, I mean, a truck without a driver in amongst a whole lot of other traffic, I mean, a truck's a very big thing in terms of its tonnage weight. What do you think?
I think this is something bright and shiny in the news cycle. Yes, I can understand why they might be doing some trials to see what's possible, but I can tell you, I think it was about 18 months ago, a driverless truck went all the way across America, and that was touted as being the start of a complete flood of these trucks onto the roads. So far, zero. I did a little bit of research today. The only driverless vehicles that are getting any traction overseas are what they call last mile. So delivery trucks that come and bring packages to your house, that sort of stuff. There's no large-scale heavy truck infrastructure happening. And the other thing is, I'll bet you when these things are driving around, they won't be driverless. There'll be somebody sitting behind the wheel just in case.
Oh, okay, well then just on that point then, what's the advantage if you're going to have a second person in the, or a person, sorry, in the cab anyway? If it's all about saving money, I thought it was about eliminating the drivers. If the drivers are going to be there anyway, why are we doing it?
Because we can. Because we're proving that we have technology, and aren't we wonderful? But the fact of the matter is, I don't see Lindsay Fox queuing up to take on a whole lot of driverless trucks at some time in the future. I think it's like all these things. More than 10 years ago, I was taken for a ride. I was in the driver's seat, but I was taken for a ride in a self-driving BMW. So far, number of production versions of self-driving BMWs, donut. There's a lot of research going on into technology that could, maybe would, at some time in the future, come into operation. But really, when you're talking about trucks, the problem is not the truck. The problem is, and not even a computer-controlled truck, because that's what we're talking about. They're not driverless, they're computer-controlled, is that trucks do what trucks do. People don't do what computers do. And if you look around the world, most of the incidents involving driverless vehicles have come when the driverless vehicle assumes that a driver is going to do whatever their programming says it should do, and the driver does something different. And that's what the real problem with this is. I've heard talk about high-speed freight trains of cars all driving, millimetres apart on the Hume Highway, all driverless, in inverted commas, because of computer controls and that sort of stuff. But there is Australia isn't ready for this sort of stuff. Maybe there are a couple of roads which work. And one of the reasons I know this is we're flooded at the moment by Chinese cars. 3 new Chinese brands going to come here again before the end of the year. But the computer driver assistance things, which are basically safety things, stop you drifting out of your lane, putting the brakes on in case you're not paying attention, none of them are calibrated for Australia. So they work perfectly well in China, where all the roads are state-controlled. They're a particular width. They have the right sort of lane marking. All the signs are the same, all the same height. They come to Australia and they freak out. I had one the other day do a brake test on me in a 100-kilometre-an-hour zone because it saw the 40 zone on the exit ramp and assumed that I was in a 40 zone.
I don't know how they're going to read our potholes in Victoria in particular, but that's another question. Electric vehicles, they're falling in terms of sales. There's a slight growth, to be fair. There's a slight growth, but it's nothing like the projections. We've got 2 of the major manufacturers, Tesla and the Chinese Build Your Own, I think it's called. They're about to lay off, Tesla in the case, about to lay off 14,000 workers. build your dreams. There you go. The sales, as I said, have increased, but only 1.1%. This takes them up to around 8% of market share. A lot of people say, look, the bubble's burst. Is this a slump, or are there bigger problems with the take-up of EVs?
Oh, there are much bigger problems. And Australia, in our case, it's a little bit like turning up to a party late and realising that all the good-looking people have already been spoken for. So what's happened is there was an astronomical take-up rate originally because of incentives. In lots of countries, there are huge government incentives of these sort of things. The incentives have come off in Europe and come off in the States, and the demand has dropped considerably. The other thing is there are car companies at the moment who are using the profits from their internal combustion cars to fund the development of these electric cars. But I can tell you, a lot of brands are now questioning what their future is and how many people are actually going to convert. So I was talking to a company yesterday who said that some of their internal combustion engine models will run longer than they thought they will because they're not going to be superseded. Now, there are some companies, Porsche is one, which is going all in on electric. Their best-selling model, the Macan, is only available in electric from the new model coming along. So there are some still committed 100%, but Bentley has wound back their electrification plan. Aston Martin have wound back their production plans. Why is that significant? Because these are niche market companies that don't have big volumes, and so for them to invest a lot of money in future programs, they have to be absolutely certain that they're going to be winners, and they're not convinced. And there are more and more companies around the world who are starting to question what their electrification plans are.
So I say to my audience, we're all taxpayers, watch the government Chris Bowen start to throw a lot of money at this to get what he wants, you into a green car. Paul, thank you as always.